We now move on to Selfie networks, please. And can you push the microphone on as well?
Hello, my name is Yiannis Yiakoumis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Selfie Networks. We are a technology company. We're based in Silicon Valley, and we help application providers participate in zero-rating programs worldwide. Our customers include companies like Tinder. Tinder is the most popular dating social network in the world, with hundreds of millions of app downloads in 192 countries. Another representative customer is Audiomack, a music streaming service with 30 employees, more than 6 million monthly active users, and 30% of which are based in Europe across all different countries. So I'm here to share our real-world experience from an application provider's perspective, and I will be making 3 points. Oops. The first one is that the barrier to entry for application providers in existing EU zero-rating schemes is very high. The second is that many eligible applications are left out of existing zero-rating programs, and this dramatically affects user choice and competition. And the last point, I'm going to argue that if we want to protect user choice and innovation, we need clear and transparent participation rules and not a vague case-by-case approach. I will be using music as a motivating example for the rest of the talk, but the same things apply to all other zero-rating categories. So let's start by looking how inclusive existing zero-rating programs are. The graph that you see on the screen now shows the number of music applications zero-rated by different mobile operators in Europe. The numbers were taken a few months ago, so there might be minor inaccuracies here. The most inclusive program has almost 200 participants in terms of music application providers, and everyone else is everywhere between 3 and 20. And so the one thing to note here is that there is a large number of eligible applications that are left out of existing zero-rating programs. And to better understand why this happens, I will walk you through what we had to do in order to get one of our customers, Audiomack, a music streaming service, zero-rated across Europe. So this is the process that we had to follow, and I think it's pretty typical of what other application providers have to do. The first thing that we had to do was figure out which operators in Europe zero-rate music applications. So we found 16 operators that were of interest, and then we tried to apply and participate in these programs. In some cases, operators had a process to accept inbound applications through email or an online form, but in most cases, there was no such process in place. So we had to use LinkedIn, trying to find relevant people in these organizations, try to connect with them and talk. And as you can imagine, this was highly inefficient. Once this was done, we had to go through a legal process that involved confidentiality and commercial agreements. Then we had to go into testing and integration to make sure the operator could detect and zero-rate the actual traffic. And finally, once things were approved, we had to set up a launch date and wait for this launch date to happen. So this looks like a straightforward process from the outside. But the real question to ask is, in how many programs were we able to get in? And the answer to that is frankly disappointing. After 6 months and working full-time on this, we've been able to participate only in 1 out of 16 zero-rating programs. And this is what I mean by a high barrier to entry. In practice, each of these steps here could take anywhere from 1 day up to multiple months, and there is absolutely no technical reason for the delay. It's purely because of the commercial practices different operators have in place and the lack of clear criteria on who can participate and how. And For a company like AudioMac and its users, this has a significant impact. Mobile data usage is one of the top user concerns for music applications. To give you a sense, 85% of songs played at AudioMac's platform are pre-downloaded and played offline. So AudioMac participates in 1 out of 16 zero rating programs in Europe, and their competitors participate in more. For example, Apple participates in 16 out of 16 operator programs, and Spotify participates in 12 out of 16. So user choice is biased. Users have incentives to use other services, and they actually do. And non-zero rated apps like AudioMac are in disadvantage. And again, this has nothing to do with technical challenges. It's largely due to the lack of clear criteria on who is eligible to participate and how. The current guidelines recommend to evaluate zero rating programs on a case-by-case scenario, considering things like market share, and our experience says that this doesn't work. First of all, it's very hard to get meaningful market share data on a per-country basis. A handful of tech giants like Apple and Spotify trump the numbers and reduce the incentives for mobile operators to work with new and smaller services like AudioMac. And national regulators don't have the necessary means and resources to practically audit and adjust zero rating programs in their countries. What we've seen in practice is several programs that violate the open and inclusive spirit of the 2016 regulation, and there is no easy way for companies that are negatively affected to make their voice being heard. So what we suggest instead is to have clear and transparent participating rules so that eligible applications and their users can benefit by such category-based zero rating. And interested stakeholders can easily audit that different parties comply to the regulation. And to be more specific, we propose 3 very, very simple rules. The first is that operators should maintain an online workflow for app providers to apply in their programs. Second, their technical and legal requirements should be reasonable and clearly documented. And third, and very important, is that the process should be time-bounded, and the operator must accept or reject an application within a specific time frame, 1 month or 2 months. We are pretty confident that this is 100% feasible, both technically and business-wise, and we know mobile operators that already follow these rules by themselves. And there is one last point that I want to make before I conclude. Many of you have brought up earlier that we don't have real use cases to make informed decisions on 5G or specialized services, etc. Well, zero rating is the first commercially deployed large-scale network differentiation service. So the level of transparency and workflows you put in place will set a precedence on what happens with others down the road. And I think this is what is very important here. I think you have a tremendous opportunity to put a clear and transparent framework in place and bring the necessary momentum for application providers, mobile operators, and technology vendors to work together and build solutions that improve the user experience while respecting user choice and competition. And with this, I want to summarize 3 main points to keep. The barrier to entry in existing zero rating programs is very high. When an application does not participate in a zero rating program and their competitors do, user choice and innovation and competition are greatly affected. And the current case-by-case approach does not work. We need more clear and more transparent participation rules. And these are 100% feasible, both technically and business-wise. If you have any comments, we would be very excited to work with you in anything that gets us closer to this direction.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I think we'll certainly have the opportunity for people to comment and question in the discussion part of this.
Just in relation to the points raised by Selfie Networks and EDVI, I just wanted to make a comment in relation to the Vodafone Pass structure, which provides specific unlimited passes for music social networks, etc. Sorry. What we have tried to do is we've created portals for partners who want to join this, both within our .com site, but also in every country in the local language in which we offer these services. We provide information as to how you join and frequently answered questions for content providers, and we make it clear on that site that there is absolutely no fee for any content provider to join. Sometimes the technical testing does take time because we do want it to be accurate, but we do try to make this as simple as possible. And if we can make it easier, we're very happy to do so.
So I think you're right that Vodafone maintains a very up-to-date portal on participating. What I want to stress here is that it's very important to put the whole process into perspective. I think inbound application is just the first step. Follow-ups, integration in a reasonable time frame, it's super, super important. I don't think I can go to more details here for legal reasons as well, but I want to stress this, that the important thing is to have the end-to-end funnel. That's why I emphasize that we need time-bound policies in place on how long it can take.
If I can just summarize a little bit what I've heard, actually a couple of issues, but one is a suggestion that the guidelines on zero rating should maybe draw on, by analogy with the non-discrimination type of provisions that that NRAs might place on incumbents or on SMP providers in fixed networks. That it should the focus should be on non-discrimination in terms of the transparency of terms and conditions, the processing timelines, the simplicity of signing up, and so forth, rather than the kind of current approach. That seems to be the suggestion that's being made. And I wondered whether such a change of approach, what people from the industry side thought about that. Is that something that they would welcome, or something that they think would be really a bad idea? Or is that a question you'd like to have notice of? I think we've heard the input. I think as I say, it might be interesting for other stakeholders to reflect on that suggestion and make sure that you give us your views on it after you've had time to consider it. Are there any other issues or any questions from the BEREC team?
We have the question if, in your opinion, the current interpretation of the BEREC guidelines with regard to zero rating practices, if they helped, or if they rather inhibited the development of commercial offers which are in favor for end users.
From our experience, they have certainly created high expectations that we will be able to participate in many zero rating programs, but in practice, we haven't seen these being realized.
From our experience, I mean, the current situation as of our mapping of October 2018, zero rating and application-specific pricing have spread to all but two EU countries, and those EU countries are Finland, where you no longer find data caps, and Bulgaria, and we don't really know the reason why in Bulgaria. But in general, it seems like all types of commercial offerings are seen as legal by regulators. We don't believe that this is a reasonable reading of the regulation. We believe there needs to be a more detailed set of rules that clearly state which types of practices and agreements are allowed and which are not. We believe that as this is an ex post regulation, the assessment has to be based on the actual practical implementation of the offer and not just the theoretical conditions that might not even be known to all market players if there are NDAs. As I said previously, the privacy impact is one of the things that needs to be addressed. And ultimately, the price per usage duration is the only metric that we could think of which allows for a comparison between the different types of data volume that consumers have at their disposal. Because from the perspective of an application provider, and they are also end users and fall within the scope of Article 3.1 and get the same protections, clearly those commercial offerings have to respect their rights in terms of an innovation paradigm as well.
Hi again, this is Gonzalo from Telefónica. We do operate in Europe, in the UK, in Germany and Spain, and also in most of Latin American countries. So in Europe, actually, we are not providing zero rating offers, whereas in Latin American countries, we are. One of the reasons for that is that given our market position in Europe and given the current regulation, we feel that somehow we do not have the enough certainty to be launching that, and maybe that regulation might be hindering the innovation on that side. In Latin America, zero rating offers that we are providing are much more developed in all the countries. And on the comment made that the zero rating inhibits innovation, I would disagree on that. And one of the case studies that we have been providing is in Latin American countries where we have been zero rating, or in this case it was sponsored data, which is a type of zero rating where the content provider pays for the traffic, that we have been providing, for example, for the banking sector and also for retailers, for small retailers, and they have been able to increase the number of downloads of their apps and also the usage of their apps, and we're able to compete with bigger retailers such as Amazon, and this has been for a small retailer. So in that, I mean, that would tend to show a proof that zero rating is helping innovation and helping smaller competitors to deal with bigger ones. In Brazil, for example, we are also providing an offer where we are providing data for free for some apps, for example, for traffic, for maps, so that people can move around easily even when they do not have data, and that has been very much welcomed by users. So we think that there is a room for zero rating, and that users are welcoming it, and also smaller enterprises as a way to compete with bigger ones.
Yeah, I think that what you said about Latin America is absolutely right. We've seen that there is a much richer way to partner between content providers and mobile operators. But there is one difference here. There is the baseline zero rating. That means how you price an application. And then on top of that, we see partnerships that go into deeper things like co-marketing incentives or subscription bundling, etc. And I think the two are totally complementary. There is no reason to regulate co-marketing and subscription bundling, and we can do this on top of a more inclusive zero rating baseline. So I think it's what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't necessarily prevents us from having inclusive zero rating for categories and then doing exclusive partnerships for things like co-marketing and subscription bundling.
Hi, thank you. My name is Alexandre Roux. I'm from the Computer and Communications Industry Associations. I can subscribe to many of the points that have been raised so far. I think whether it's the example from Telefónica or the presentation made by Selfie Networks, one of the points that is very important, ultimately, if we want zero rating to be pro-innovation and pro-consumer, is inclusiveness, and that's the first sort of element, the first criterion. Going forward, maybe the guidelines could benefit from a little bit more sort of specificity around what inclusiveness means. Now, to follow up on the presentation made by Selfie Networks, if we stick to the music case examples, once you've made it to, if you're eligible and you've made it to a zero rating program, I think what's also important is to recognize that we have more and more caps out there that are doing, they have multi-features, and some, for example, music services will be bundled as a music zero rated service. but would offer video, and that would usually come probably at a cheaper price than your average sort of video services out there. So I think adding a criteria on technical, sort of an objective technical assessment of zero-rated offers out there, rather than just pure discretionary choice by ISPs, would be beneficial.